Yes, I know what you're thinking. You're 26? I always thought you were more like 50. And that is frankly uncalled for. I like to think that I have a aura of maturity. But yes, I am in fact 26, and before making this video, I hadn't seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, even though everyone else in the no man's land between Zoomer and Millennial has seen it as a kid, and I didn't know that it existed as a kid, certainly. And I was gonna hold off on watching it too, at least for a little while, for excellent reasons, but then I realized I was soon going to be on a live stream with a YouTuber who is rather famous for talking about Avatar, and I figured that if I had actually seen the show, I could pretend to have not seen the show and be ignorant in a more annoying way. I don't know who the world is, but I do know my way around Ba Sing Se now, so.
Around the what?
Yeah, Ba Sing Se, you know, the capital of the Earth Kingdom.
Do you mean Please tell, you're winding me up.
You know Ba Sing Se?
Sing Se.
You are winding me up. I do not buy it. Yeah, I do not buy it.
It's that's the German pronunciation is Ba Sing Se.
That's very funny.
In upstate New York, there's town of Ba Sing Se.
It's
Ba Sing Se.
gonna continue calling it that just for the sake of.
Oh.
I didn't get all the way to the end, unfortunately, by that point, but now, after the holidays, having seen the finale, I can finally say my absolute definitive verdict on Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's a good show. Yeah, it's good. It's not bad. It's good. That may sound like a rather tepid endorsement, but do consider that I absolutely despise animation. I wonder constantly why this is, because apparently so many cool things are animation. And my current theory is that it's the little dissonance in how human emotions are portrayed. When you have any kind of animation, there is always a certain loss of fidelity because you don't have the 42 facial muscles that actors use to express realistic human emotion. Animating those would be a crazy thing that crazy people do. And of course, because of the stylization that happens, the face shapes and body shapes of people are often unrealistic to a highly extreme degree. And in order to make sure that doesn't look weird, you need to use representative body language as opposed to actual direct body language that would be the way that a normal human being with all the facial muscles and a regular body shape would act. And you also need to exaggerate that body language and those facial expressions in order to convey the emotions that you're trying to convey in a manner that is unambiguous. Now, I am very finely attuned to body language and facial expressions, all the intricacies of human social interaction. Maybe I'm even a little bit hypersensitive, but the way that animation does it needs to do it in order to properly show what it is trying to show is, to me, very often a bit loud, if that makes any sense, and it confuses and irritates me. I think this is also why I can watch animated comedy shows, like for instance Rick and Morty, because there everything is hyped up anyway, so it doesn't matter that the emotions aren't perfectly real and realistic. And I think this is the saving grace that made Avatar: The Last Airbender watchable for me, because I could build that bridge in my head, given that as a kids show, it obviously did have a lot of jokes in there. Now, to be fair, most of those jokes were not funny because kids have a terrible sense of humor, but even I have to admit that some of Sokka's puns, absolute bangers.
What does the cabbage merchant use to fix his cabbages? A cabbage patch!
Speaking of Sokka, right, they really did my man dirty, and this is one of the things that I very strongly dislike about the show. Even as a kid, I was never a fan of the designated heel trope, which is when a character, usually through their incompetence, is always the butt of the joke, and it irritates me even more when this is because of their competence. Everything that Sokka does is played for laughs. Even when he is right, the world conspires to prove him wrong, and the other characters lay into him mercilessly for that. Look, I'm all for a little banter. Banter is one of my love languages, but there's a point where it becomes like just bullying, and I'm not sure about the pedagogical implications of putting that in a kids show. And no, by the way, him getting a cool sword that he then proceeds to never use, and maybe catching a W or two with his boomerang throughout the course of all the 3 seasons, it doesn't count as redeeming him with a good character arc, because he never even becomes as competent as the other characters were at the beginning of the show. Something that I really liked about this show, nay, loved really, was the nuance. Everything has a certain degree of ambiguity, especially in the realm of politics. It is all complex. There's no black and white moral absolutism, and I cannot overemphasize how important it is to teach this to kids. Yes, the Fire Nation is an imperialistic axis of evil, but it's also oppressive to its own people, not all of whom are exactly happy with its rule. It wasn't founded as an evil empire either. Sozin actually had some noble ideas of sharing his prosperity with the world, and the counter-argument to that at the time was the simple conservative claptrap of, but it's always been the way that it is now. The individual characters are all motivated by personal goals. Yes, Firelord Osai is power-hungry, but Zuko serves the system to win his approval as a dad. Meanwhile, the Earth Kingdom is not just the good guys. They have their own secret police and authoritarian shadow government. The anti-Fire Nation rebels are so extreme that they completely dehumanize everyone based on what I assume, and I'm still not entirely clear on this, is their ethnicity, which is demonstrated to be very misguided. There's a firebending master who has defected to such an extent that he now lives in the woods and stands in his own way with his philosophy. Everyone is caught up at the intersection of their personal struggles and the realities of the world around them. And this is contrasted even in characters like Azula, who is just straight up an irredeemable sociopath, which are also people that exist in the real world. Even in conjunction with the plot, all of the characters still all act like characters all of the time. They have their own ideals and their own flaws, and they are inconsistent enough, but not too inconsistent to feel like actual people. Like when the plot requires Zuko to join up with the main characters and he goes over there to seek his redemption, and they're like, fuck off. I really liked that, because that's how you would react to the guy that's been hunting you for 2 years going, hey, can we be mates though? They only band together out of necessity, and then from there an organic relationship develops. All the character arcs are so well integrated with the main plot. There's plenty of adult media that doesn't have nearly this degree of nuance and political complexity. Honestly, genuinely, with how well done it is in this show, I think it may be my favorite thing about it. That and the guy with the forehead laser. That guy fucking rules. It could have just been 3 seasons of him not even talking, just blasting people with his eye that he has here in his head. He's so cool. Now, something that irritated me is that they are all kids. And yes, I realize this is a kids show. And back when I was a kid, I would not have questioned for a second anything that was happening with these kids being treated like they're not kids. But this video isn't called 13-year-old watches Avatar: The Last Airbender for the first time, so I am going to lay into this shit. I cringe every time some adult who is ostensibly a responsible person sends out these literal actual children into the world, into some unfathomably dangerous situation. Most of the time, they're treated like adults, and the fact that they are sometimes treated like children makes it all the more irritating. Especially how they master the elements, that really bothers me even more. All of the master benders that we see are, old. They're also ripped as hell, but, mostly they're old people with white hair. And then there's decades of people who are not masters, And then there's a 9-year-old girl. And look, I realize that Toph is a prodigy of some kind, but even the actual prodigy didn't release his first album until he was 19, and that one was not his best. This becomes even more grating with Katara, who within a few months goes from barely being able to make water float to earning a master's degree after a 2-week crash course. You know who feels like a real prodigy to me? Zuko, because Zuko is a teenager. And he is a highly competent firebender, but he is not this particularly invincible guy who just trounces armies of seasoned benders all of the time. I can even get behind Aang because he is not portrayed to be hyper-competent with anything but air, and he is even the Avatar. It's just that being able to control all the elements really gives him a huge tactical advantage, and he uses that for himself. But you know, again, obviously all of these things only bothered me because I was an adult watching the show. As a kid, I would not have questioned this for a second. I've seen MasterChef Junior. I know kids can do some pretty impressive stuff. So I couldn't hold this against the show really if I wanted to. Plus, it's essential to have the really cool action scenes that are always really, really imaginative and really, really badass. And I really, really like that. Oh, don't use adverbs so much. Fuck you. It's not like I'm a published author with a book out that you should buy. And because this is a kids show, it did something else that I found as an adult really very refreshing, and that is that, I mean, look, usually one of my absolute favorite genres of fiction is noir anything. This right here, The Yiddish Policeman's Union by Michael Chabon, one of my all-time favorite books. It's a very dark, very cynical noir detective story. I like The Sopranos and Mad Men. That's the shows that I usually watch. So what I found very refreshing about Aang is that he isn't like a hard-boiled veteran of life who has been so fucked so many different times that his entire worldview might as well be a manifesto. Aang is playful, he likes to have fun, he likes to be a kid, which also ties in perfectly with his character arc because his childhood was practically stolen from him by a massive burden of responsibilities, the implications of which he could not even understand. And I can relate to that. However, and this is something very, very strange, where I'm not even sure if I should put it in the video, because it will get taken the wrong way. Even though I liked Avatar: The Last Airbender quite a bit for various reasons, one of which is also the creature design, which I adored, and not just because they made a furry tardigrade, I found the show uninspiring. Not uninspired, mind you, but uninspiring. Usually when I enjoy a piece of media, and let's be honest, even when I don't enjoy a piece of media, I consume it, and it really just feeds the massive idea machine that is constantly churning out bullshit upon bullshit that is up here working in my head. And that just didn't happen at any point while I was watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. And this isn't because it's outside of my genre. Even with things that are outside of my genre, usually I get inspired to take it apart and do different things with it. Usually it'll even just spark completely new ideas of its own, just motivate me to get work done. But for some reason, with Avatar, that just didn't happen, and I don't understand why. Even when I was going, damn, this is so cool, it was never a thing. And no other piece of media has ever failed to do this for me to such a consistent degree. As a kid, not even having seen Avatar, I remember Avatar inspiring some of my creative endeavors, but now watching it, I had to watch other things in between as like a palate cleanser. And I wish I had some deep and meaningful analysis for this as to why it happened, but I don't. I don't even have a vague idea as to why this is the case, and that's immensely frustrating. Anyway, still final verdict, Avatar: The Last Airbender, even as an adult, worth a watch, I think. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. Consider supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar, buying some of my merchandise or my short story collection. And in that spirit, I'm probably gonna go watch Korra. Well, not next. I'm already watching something else next. But I will watch Korra eventually, because a lot of people told me that I should really just watch Avatar for me personally, because I should then get into Korra, because they all tell me that I would like Korra more. So, we'll see. See you around, cunts.